The rain had been relentless all afternoon, hammering the cracked sidewalks of Southside Chicago with the kind of fury that turned streets into rivers and left even the toughest souls seeking refuge. Terrence Caldwell hunched deeper into his faded Navy work jacket, the Apex Industries logo stitched over his chest, almost invisible under the downpour. He had spent the last 12 hours crawling through dusty vents, fixing broken heating units, and patching burst pipes in one of the city's tallest corporate towers. All he wanted now was a hot shower, a cheap microwave meal, and the comfort of his small, quiet apartment, the only place where the world didn't constantly remind him of the lines it had drawn between people like him and the ones he worked for. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. Through the blur of rain against his truck's windshield, Terrence caught a flicker of movement, a pale figure stumbling along the shoulder of Highway 90. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light. Who in their right mind would be out walking in weather like this? But then the figure collapsed to their knees, clutching at the air as if the storm itself was trying to swallow them whole. Without a second thought, Terrence jerked the wheel to the right and pulled over, his old Ford groaning in protest. "Hey, are you all right?" he shouted, already out of the truck and sprinting toward the stranger. The rain soaked through his uniform in seconds, icy needles stabbing at his skin. The figure turned. A woman drenched to the bone, her once white dress torn and clinging to her like a second skin. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, and her blonde hair was plastered to her cheeks. "My car," she gasped. "Crashed, phone's dead." Her voice was barely audible over the storm, but Terrence didn't need to hear the rest. He wrapped his jacket around her trembling frame and guided her toward the truck. "Come on, let's get you warm. There's a hospital nearby." "No," she interrupted sharply, panic flashing in her wide, blue eyes. "Please, no hospitals." Terrence frowned but didn't press. There was something desperate in her tone, something that told him she wasn't just a stranded motorist. Still, she was injured and half frozen. Whatever her story was could wait. "All right, my place is close. You can dry off there, and we'll figure it out." The drive back was tense. The woman? She'd said her name was Scarlett, drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling incoherently. Terrence kept talking to her, anything to keep her awake. "Scarlett, huh? That's a fancy name. I'm Terrence. Terrence Caldwell. We're almost there, okay? Just hang on." His apartment building wasn't much to look at. A crumbling brick structure with flickering hallway lights and peeling paint. But it was home. He carried Scarlett up 3 flights of stairs, her designer heels abandoned in the truck. Mrs. Chen, his elderly neighbor, poked her head out as he passed. "Terrence, is everything okay?" "Found her in the storm," he said, slightly out of breath. "She needs help." Mrs. Chen's eyes widened. "I have some clothes my granddaughter left, and a first aid kit. I'll bring them." Inside, Terrence laid Scarlett gently on his worn couch and hurried to fetch towels. She stirred, blinking in confusion as she looked around the modest space. Second-hand furniture, a tiny kitchenette, a wall of family photos. "Where am I?" "My apartment, Southside." "You said your car crashed," he replied, handing her a towel. She touched the wound on her forehead and winced. "Someone ran me off the road," she whispered. "I think it was deliberate." Terrence paused. "We should call the police." "No." The word was out of her mouth before he finished. "Not yet. I don't know who to trust." Mrs. Chen returned with clothes and a first aid kit, helping Scarlett into dry sweatpants and an oversized T-shirt while Terrence made tea and soup in the kitchen. His mind raced. Who was this woman? Why would someone target her? When Scarlett emerged, she looked nothing like the woman he'd pulled from the highway. Younger, softer, vulnerable. "Thank you," she murmured, her hands trembling as she accepted the tea. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stopped." "Anyone would have done the same," Terrence said, though he knew it wasn't true. "Most people would have driven past. Most people had." "Why did you help me?" she asked, studying him with piercing blue eyes. "You don't even know me." "Didn't need to." "You needed help. That's how I was raised. My grandma always said, 'We rise by lifting others.'" A faint smile tugged at Scarlett's lips. "Your grandmother sounds wise." "She was," Terrence said softly. "Passed last year." Silence settled between them, broken only by the rhythmic patter of rain against the windows. Then, quietly, "This crash, you really think it was intentional?" Scarlett hesitated, then nodded. "There's a hostile takeover attempt at my company. I was on my way to meet someone who claimed to have information, but it was a setup." "What company?" Terrence asked, though something in his gut already knew. "Apex Industries." The name hit him like a punch. That's where I work." Scarlett's eyes widened slightly. "Small world." "Yeah," he said with a nervous laugh. "Though I doubt we've crossed paths. I'm in maintenance, nights mostly. Fixing things the day shift breaks. Different worlds." She murmured. "Yeah." Terrence agreed quietly. "Different worlds." They said nothing more. Scarlett's exhaustion was written all over her face. "You should rest," Terrence said, standing. "Take the bedroom." "I'll crash on the couch." "I couldn't." "It's not up for debate," he said firmly. "You've been through hell. You need rest." She stood, swaying slightly, and he reached out to steady her. For a moment, their eyes locked, and something unspoken passed between them. A spark, fleeting but real. "Thank you, Terrence," she whispered. "You're a good man. Just doing what's right," he replied, stepping back. "Get some sleep. We'll figure everything out in the morning." As Scarlett disappeared into his small bedroom, Terrence sat back on the couch, the weight of the night settling on his shoulders. He'd started the evening thinking about leftovers and rest. Now a mysterious woman, a stranger with secrets, was asleep in his bed, and if what she said was true, she wasn't just anyone. She was the CEO of Apex Industries, the same company that paid him barely enough to survive, the same company where men like him were invisible. And for reasons he didn't yet understand, her life had just fallen into his hands. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the city wrapped in a damp gray haze. Terrence woke to the smell of bacon and coffee, disoriented for a moment, until the memories of the previous night came rushing back. He followed the sound of humming to the kitchen, where Scarlett stood barefoot, wearing the oversized sweatpants and shirt Mrs. Chen had given her. Her blonde hair was pulled into a messy bun, and without the layers of makeup and corporate polish, she looked almost ordinary. "Good morning," she said, flashing a soft smile. "I hope you don't mind. I wanted to thank you for last night." "You didn't have to," Terrence replied, leaning against the doorway. "But I'm not complaining. No one's cooked breakfast for me in a long time." They ate together at his small kitchen table. It was a strange scene. A man who fixed toilets for a living sharing eggs and toast with a woman who probably had people to cook for her every day. But Scarlett moved around his modest apartment as if she belonged there, not flinching at the peeling linoleum or mismatched plates. For a moment, Terrence allowed himself to forget who she was and what her world represented. "So," he ventured carefully, "what's the plan? Do you have someone you can call?" Scarlett's smile faded. "That's the problem. I don't know who I can trust. The people trying to take over the company, they've been turning my allies against me one by one. I don't even know if my board is on my side anymore." What about family? Terrence asked gently. She stared at her plate. My parents died when I was young, no siblings. The company is all I have. I'm sorry, he said softly. That sounds lonely. It is, she admitted, then looked up with a searching gaze. You're different from what I expected. Expected? He asked. When you said you worked maintenance at Apex, I've heard how the overnight crew talks about the executives. They hate us. Terrence shifted uncomfortably. Not hate. It's just you all live in a different stratosphere. We clean your offices, fix your private bathrooms, maintain your lounges, but we're invisible to you. You never see us. You're not invisible to me, Scarlett said quietly, reaching across the table to touch his hand. The contact sent a jolt of warmth through him, and he quickly pulled back, standing up to busy himself with the dishes. I should check on your car, he muttered. See if the police found it. Terrence. Wait, she said, rising too. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. You saved my life. You didn't have to take me in, but you did. That means something. It means I'm a decent human being, he replied. Nothing more. It means everything in my world, she countered softly. Do you know how rare genuine kindness is where I come from? She stopped herself, biting her lip. When you're never mind. When you're what? Terrence pressed. Rich. Powerful. Her eyes darted away. I work in upper management, she said carefully. How upper? He asked. Before she could answer, Terrence's phone buzzed on the counter. A text from his supervisor emergency meeting. All maintenance staff. 30 minutes. I have to go, he said. You can stay here as long as you need. On a Saturday, Scarlett asked with a faint smile. Rich people's buildings don't stop breaking on weekends, he said dryly. Will you be okay? I'll be fine. Actually, could I borrow your laptop? I need to check something. Terrence hesitated. Sure. Passwords Grams Caldwell 88. She smiled faintly. Your grandmother? Everything good in my life comes back to her, he said, pulling on his jacket. After he left, Scarlett wasted no time. She booted up his old Dell and logged into Apex's executive portal using encrypted credentials. What she saw made her stomach twist. The hostile takeover was worse than she'd thought. Board members had been systematically manipulated, and a vote was scheduled for Monday. If she didn't show up, they'd declare her incapacitated and replace her. But then something else caught her attention. On impulse, she searched for Terrence Caldwell's employee file. What she found broke her heart. 8 years of service, perfect attendance, commendations from supervisors, and yet he had been passed over for promotion 5 times. Each rejection cloaked in vague phrases. Not the right fit. Needs more polish. Cultural mismatch. She recognized the code words for what they were: discrimination. Then she found his education records. A full scholarship to Northwestern, a degree in engineering, honors. He'd been forced into maintenance work because no company would hire a black engineer during the 2008 recession without connections. Oh, Terrence, she whispered. You're so much more than maintenance. Meanwhile, Terrence arrived at Apex to find chaos in the basement conference room. The entire maintenance team had been called in, all of them looking confused and uneasy. A group of men in expensive suits stood at the front. Executives Terrence had never seen on the basement floor before. Good morning, one of them said, stepping forward. I'm Harrison Cross, interim head of operations. I'll get right to the point. Scarlett Winters, our CEO, has been missing since last night. Her car was found crashed, but she's nowhere to be found. Terrence's blood ran cold. Why are you telling us this? Someone called out from the back. Because someone in this company is helping her, Cross replied, his eyes scanning the room like a predator. Someone with access to the building, but beneath the executive radar. We're reviewing keycard logs, phone records, surveillance footage. If anyone knows anything, now's the time to speak. Terrence forced his face to remain neutral, but his heart was racing. Scarlett Winters, the woman sleeping in his bed, was the CEO of Apex Industries. The same woman whose face smiled down from the lobby portrait. The same woman who earned more in a day than he did in a year. There's a 50,000 reward for information leading to her location, Cross added coldly, and termination for anyone found aiding her. The meeting ended in tense silence. As Terrence turned to leave, his supervisor, Janet, pulled him aside. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," he said quickly, just surprised. Why would someone want to hurt Miss Winters? Janet lowered her voice. "Word is Cross and his buddies want to gut the company. Sell it off in pieces. Scarlett's been blocking them." With her gone, she made a slicing motion across her throat. Terrence nodded and walked away, his mind spinning. $50,000, enough to pay off his student loans, help his sister with her kids, maybe even start his own business. But then, he remembered the way Scarlett had looked at him over breakfast. The way she'd thanked him. The way she'd touched his hand. By the time he finished his shift, Terrence had made his choice. When he returned home, Scarlett was pacing his living room, her laptop open on the coffee table. "We need to talk," they both said at the same time. "You first," Terrence said, dropping his work bag. "I should have told you the truth," Scarlett said. "I'm Scarlett Winters, CEO of Apex Industries." "I know," he said quietly. "Harrison Cross told us." Her eyes widened. "Are you going to turn me in?" "No," Terrence said firmly. "But you can't stay here. They're checking everyone's records. It's not safe." "I have nowhere else to go," she said desperately. "They're watching everything. Hotels, my properties, even friends' houses. The only reason I'm safe here is because someone like you isn't worth noticing." That's one way to put it. Terrence muttered bitterly. "No," she said quickly. "That's not what I meant. The only reason I'm safe is because you see me as just Scarlett. Not a CEO, not a target, just me." Terrence stared at her, searching her face for any trace of deception. But what he saw wasn't arrogance or pity. It was sincerity. A woman stripped of power and status, desperate to be seen for who she truly was. And despite himself, something inside him softened. "How do you know I won't change my mind?" he asked quietly. $50,000 is a lot of money to someone like me. Someone like you. Scarlett stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "You mean someone with integrity. Someone who gives his bedroom to a stranger. Someone who works a job beneath his qualifications because the system won't give him a chance." Terrence froze. "How do you know about that?" "I looked you up," she admitted. "Northwestern engineering graduate. Top of your class. 8 years of perfect service at Apex. Passed over for every promotion. You should be running a department, Terrence, not fixing pipes. That's life for people who look like me," he muttered bitterly. "No," she said firmly. "That's injustice, and it's going to change. If you survive this hostile takeover," he said. "When I survive," Scarlett corrected, "with your help." Over the next 2 days, Terrence's small apartment transformed into a war room. Scarlett spent hours typing on his old laptop, gathering documents and building a case, while Terrence moved quietly through the building during his shifts, listening and observing. Maintenance staff heard everything. They were invisible, and invisibility came with information. "Cross is getting desperate," Terrence reported on Sunday night. He's moved the board meeting up to tomorrow morning. If you don't show up, they'll vote you out. I need to get into the building tonight, Scarlett said, her tone urgent. There's evidence in my office safe that proves Cross has been embezzling, but security will be on high alert. I can get you in, Terrence replied after a long pause. Maintenance has access to everything, and Sunday night is skeleton crew. Scarlett's eyes widened. You'd risk your job for me. I'm already risking it by having you here, he said with a small shrug. Besides, someone needs to stop Cross from destroying the company. A lot of good people work there. Scarlett smiled and, without thinking, leaned forward to press a soft kiss to his cheek. You're remarkable, Terrence Caldwell. Do you know that? He touched the spot where her lips had been, feeling his pulse race. Let's just focus on the mission. A few hours later, under the cover of darkness, they drove to Apex Industries. Scarlett wore Terrence's spare maintenance uniform, her blonde hair tucked under a cap. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest as they approached the loading dock. You okay? Terrence asked, sensing her tension. I've walked through this building 1,000 times as CEO, she whispered. Now I'm sneaking in through the back, dressed as maintenance. It's surreal. Welcome to how the other half lives, Terrence said dryly. The invisible half, she corrected softly. I'm starting to understand what that means. The security guard barely glanced at them as Terrence flashed his ID badge. Together, they slipped into the basement corridors, a world Scarlett had never truly seen before. The break rooms with broken chairs, the flickering lights no one ever bothered to fix, the motivational posters faded and curling at the edges. This is horrible, she murmured. This is normal, Terrence replied. But your office is a different universe. Want to see what your company looks like from our perspective? They rode the service elevator up to the executive floor. The contrast was staggering. Polished marble floors, original artwork, panoramic views of the city below. It was a kingdom in the clouds, completely detached from the reality beneath it. Terrence led Scarlett to her office using his master key. 5 minutes, he warned. No more. As she went straight to her hidden safe, hands trembling as she entered the code. Inside were flash drives and documents, evidence of Cross's embezzlement, offshore accounts, and bribes. She stuffed everything into a small bag. Got it. Someone's coming, Terrence hissed. They ducked into a maintenance closet just as Cross and 2 security guards entered the office. Tear it apart, Cross ordered. She had to have left something. But for 20 agonizing minutes, they stood pressed together in the cramped darkness, hardly daring to breathe. Scarlett's heart pounded against Terrence's chest, and without thinking, he wrapped his arms around her, holding her steady. It's okay, he whispered. I've got you. She looked up, her face inches from his. And in that charged, breathless moment, their lips met. The kiss was electric, desperate and raw, a surge of everything they'd been holding back. When the sound of footsteps faded and the office fell silent, they stayed frozen, clinging to each other. We should go, Terrence whispered at last. Yes, Scarlett agreed, but she kissed him again before they slipped out into the hallway. Back at his apartment, the adrenaline slowly drained from their bodies. The evidence lay spread across the coffee table, but their minds were elsewhere, on the kiss, on the connection neither of them had expected. I'm sorry, Scarlett said, finally breaking the silence. That was inappropriate. You're technically my employee. Don't make this about power. Terrence interrupted. We both felt something. We have since the first night. You're right, she admitted. I've felt more alive these past 3 days with you than I have in years. You see me? Not my position, not my money. Me, And you see me, Terrence said quietly. Not my race. Not my job. I see a brilliant engineer forced into maintenance because the system failed him. Scarlett said fiercely. I see a man who risked everything for a stranger. I see someone I'm falling for, despite every reason not to. Terrence exhaled shakily. Scarlett, after tomorrow, everything changes. You'll go back to being the CEO, and I'll go back to being invisible. No, she said, her voice steady. Things are going to change, starting with you getting the position you deserve. I don't want charity, he protested. It's not charity, she insisted. It's justice. But that's tomorrow's fight. Tonight, she reached for his hand. Tonight, can we just be Scarlett and Terrence? Not CEO and maintenance worker. Not rich and poor. Just two people who found each other in a storm. He hesitated, then nodded. And when he kissed her again, it wasn't desperate or hurried. It was slow, deliberate, full of promise. They stayed up talking until dawn. Scarlett told him about growing up in a mansion where love was measured in business deals. Terrence spoke about his grandmother, the woman who taught him dignity and resilience. They shared dreams, fears, and stories they'd never told anyone else. I love your mind, Scarlett said softly, tracing patterns on his palm. The way you see solutions where others see problems. And I love your strength, Terrence replied. You could have given up, but you're still fighting. I have a reason to fight, she said, meeting his gaze. I found something worth fighting for. The first hints of sunlight crept through the blinds. The board meeting was just hours away, and the stakes had never been higher. How are you going to get in? Terrence asked. Scarlett's lips curved into a small, defiant smile. They'll be watching for CEO Scarlett Winters. But they won't be watching for a maintenance worker. The boardroom of Apex Industries had never been so tense. It was just after 900 a.m., and the company's most powerful people sat around the polished mahogany table, their faces masks of anticipation, greed, and thinly veiled satisfaction. Harrison Cross, the interim head of operations, stood at the front with a smug expression plastered across his face. Miss Winters has failed to appear, he announced. I motion that we proceed with the vote to remove her as CEO and install new leadership. Seconded, came a voice from down the table. All in favor. The heavy double doors swung open with a bang. Every head turned as a woman in a navy, blue maintenance uniform strode into the room, pushing a mop bucket. Her hair was tied back, no makeup on her face. Behind her walked Terrence and 5 other maintenance workers. A stunned silence fell over the room. Sorry I'm late, Scarlett said calmly, her voice carrying through the chamber. I was working. Security! Cross barked, his composure cracking. Already called them? Scarlett replied evenly, nodding toward the hallway as 2 FBI agents stepped into the room, followed by a small group of federal investigators. Agent Martinez, I believe you'll find everything you need on these drives. She handed over a stack of USB devices and documents. The agents immediately began scanning through them, their expressions hardening as they read. What is this? Cross demanded, his voice rising. Proof, Scarlett said, stepping closer to the table. Proof that you've been embezzling company funds, bribing board members, and laundering money through offshore accounts. And proof that this so-called takeover was nothing more than a scheme to line your own pockets. This is ridiculous, Cross spat. What's ridiculous? Scarlett countered. Is that Terrence Caldwell here has been fixing your mistakes for 8 years, while being passed over for promotion because he doesn't fit the culture. What's ridiculous is that Maria Santos, she gestured toward a maintenance worker, has a master's degree but cleans your offices because you won't look past her accent. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. The agent stepped forward. "Mr. Cross," Agent Martinez said, "you're under arrest for corporate fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice." Cross's face drained of color as the agent snapped cuffs around his wrists and led him out of the room. The remaining board members looked on in stunned silence. "Effective immediately," Scarlett said, turning back to them. "We are restructuring Apex Industries. We're promoting from within. We're creating advancement programs. And we're ensuring that every employee, from the CEO to the night janitor, is valued equally. You can't just—" one board member began. "I can," Scarlett interrupted, "and I will. I'm the CEO, and I have the evidence to remove anyone who opposes these changes. But I'd rather you stay. I'd rather we build something better together." Then she turned to Terrence, her expression softening. "Mr. Caldwell, would you consider a position as head of sustainable development? We need someone with your engineering background and your perspective." Terrence's mouth opened, but no words came. Yes," he finally managed, stunned. The board meeting lasted hours, but the power dynamic had shifted completely. Scarlett had won. When the room finally emptied, she and Terrence stood alone amid the echoes of what they had just accomplished.
"You didn't have to do that,"
he said quietly. "Yes, I did," she replied. "Not just for you. For everyone who's been overlooked." She hesitated, then looked up at him. "But I need to know, what happens to us now?" The weeks that followed were some of the most challenging of their lives. News of Scarlett's dramatic return and Cross's arrest dominated headlines. CO goes undercover in her own company blared one. From janitor to executive. Apex's radical shake up declared another. Terrence's sudden promotion sent shockwaves through the company. Admiration from some, resentment from others. At his first executive meeting, Bradley Hutchinson, a senior vice president, sneered. "So, you're the CEO's new pet project." "I'm the new head of sustainable development." Terrence replied calmly. "And I have ideas that will save this company millions while improving working conditions." "Big ideas," Bradley said sarcastically. "For a janitor." "For an engineer," Terrence corrected, "who happened to work as a janitor. And that experience taught me more about this building's inefficiencies than any of your reports." Scarlett watched the exchange from the head of the table, pride shining in her eyes. But not everything was smooth. After the meeting, Terrence found himself pacing his new office. Larger than anything he'd ever imagined, yet suffocating in its expectations. Maybe this was a mistake, he admitted when Scarlett stopped by. "No," she said firmly. "Change is hard. They'll resist it. But you're exactly what this company needs." "What about us?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The board's already whispering about the CEO dating her charity case." She flinched as if struck. "Is that what you think you are?" "Isn't it?" Terrence said bitterly. "Rich white woman saves poor black man, gives him a job, makes herself feel better about the system. That's not fair." "Isn't it?" he repeated. "Look at us, Scarlett. Your world, my world. They don't mix, not without someone getting hurt." A Scarlett crossed the room and cupped his face in her hands. "You're right. Our worlds don't mix. So let's build a new one." Before he could respond, she kissed him deeply, a kiss that was more than affection. It was a declaration. When they finally broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I'm falling in love with you," she whispered. "Not because I saved you or you saved me, but because you see me, the real me." "I love you too," he admitted. "But you, no buts," she said firmly. "We'll face whatever comes, together." The knock at the door shattered the moment. Janet, Terrence's former supervisor, stepped in with a knowing smile. "Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Caldwell, but there's a situation in maintenance. They're threatening to walk out." Terrence blinked. "Why?" "They think you've abandoned them," she said gently. "Sold out for a suit and an office." Minutes later, Terrence stood in the dimly lit basement, facing a crowd of angry former coworkers. Raymond, one of his closest friends, crossed his arms. "So you're too good for us now?" "Never," Terrence said firmly. "Everything I'm doing up there is for us down here. Better wages, better conditions, opportunities to move up. But I can't do it without your support." "You're dating the CEO," someone shouted. "How do we know you're not just thinking with your—" "Enough?" Terrence interrupted. "Yes, Scarlett and I have feelings for each other. But that started when she was just a scared woman who needed help. And I was just a man who offered it. If anything, our relationship makes me fight harder for you, because she actually listens." "Prove it?" Raymond challenged. "Give me 1 month," Terrence said. "If nothing changes, I'll resign." And with that, the weight of 2 worlds settled on his shoulders. The world he'd come from, and the one he was trying to change. For the first time, he realized how much was riding on his shoulders. Not just his future, not just Scarlett's, but the future of everyone who had ever been invisible. The next month was the hardest of Terrence Caldwell's life. Every day began before sunrise and ended long after midnight. He walked the fine line between 2 worlds, fighting for change in executive boardrooms, while earning back the trust of the workers, who had once called him one of their own. Slowly, the walls began to crack. His first initiative was a series of energy efficiency projects that cut the company's utility costs by nearly 30%. Instead of pocketing the savings, Terrence pushed the board to redistribute them as employee bonuses. He proposed a mentorship program pairing executives with maintenance staff, creating direct pathways to promotion. He fought for, and won, full tuition reimbursement for any employee pursuing further education. Results spoke louder than words. Within weeks, morale began to rise. The once hostile maintenance crew started showing cautious support. Even the skeptical board members had to admit that Terrence's changes were improving productivity and profits. Yet the pressure was relentless, and it began to take a toll. "I miss you," Scarlett whispered one night, finding him asleep at his desk amid piles of reports and architectural plans. "I miss us too," he murmured, pulling her into his lap. "But I have to prove myself." "To whom?" she asked. "The board, the workers, or yourself?" "All of them," Terrence confessed. "I need them to see I earned this, that I wasn't handed anything." "You did earn it," Scarlett said firmly. "Through 8 years of perfect service. Through brilliant ideas. Through integrity. And through dating the CEO," he muttered. "We weren't dating when I promoted you. But we are now. And everyone knows it." Scarlett sighed and stood. "So what? Are we supposed to hide what we feel? Pretend it isn't real?" "Maybe we should cool things off," Terrence said quietly. "At least until—" "No," she snapped. "I've spent my whole life hiding. My loneliness, my fears, my doubts. I won't hide you, even if it costs me the board's support." "And if I want to hide?" he asked softly. "Then that's your choice," she said, pausing at the door. "But I won't be part of it." After she left, Terrence sat alone, haunted by his grandmother's words. Love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone worth fighting for. The next morning, he made a decision. The executive boardroom was silent as Scarlett finished her quarterly report. Terrence rose from his seat. "I have something to add," he said, his voice steady. "Go ahead, Mr. Caldwell," Scarlett said formally. "I want to be transparent about something," Terrence announced. Miss Winters and I are in a relationship. It began after my promotion, not before. But if anyone questions my qualifications, I welcome a full performance review by an independent committee." A heavy silence followed. Then Bradley Hutchinson laughed derisively. "This is inappropriate on every level." "What's inappropriate?" Scarlett cut in sharply. "Is that we're even having this conversation. Terrence's performance speaks for itself. He's saved this company $3 million in 1 month. Our relationship has no bearing on his achievements. But the optics." Another board member began. "The optics," Scarlett said firmly, "are that Apex Industries is a place where love transcends race, class, and position. Where merit matters more than background. Where two people who found each other in extraordinary circumstances can build something extraordinary together. If that threatens you, perhaps you're in the wrong company." For a while, things seemed to settle. The maintenance staff embraced Terrence's programs, productivity soared, and even some of the most critical board members began to soften. Scarlett and Terrence established professional boundaries at work and built their relationship privately. Then the photos surfaced. Someone had hired a private investigator. Pictures of them together, laughing in Terrence's truck, holding hands at a quiet restaurant, kissing outside his apartment, splashed across tabloids. The headlines were cruel: CEO's ghetto romance. And, sleeping her way down the ladder, the hate mail was worse. Terrence received threats. Scarlett was called a traitor to her race. "How do you stand it?" she asked one night, tears streaming as she read the vile messages. The judgment, the assumptions. "I remember that their hate says more about them than it does about us," he said, pulling her into his arms. "But if this is too much—" "Don't you dare," she cut him off. "Don't you dare give them what they want." The next day, protesters gathered outside Apex, some celebrating the relationship as a triumph of love and equality, others condemning it as an abomination. The board convened an emergency meeting. "This has to stop," Bradley declared. "Either you end this relationship, or we call a vote of no confidence." "Then call it," Scarlett said coldly. "Scarlett, no," Terrence pleaded. "The company will survive," she said. "But I won't survive becoming someone who chooses fear over love." The vote was set for the next morning. That night, they held each other in Terrence's small apartment, the place where everything had begun. "You could lose everything," he whispered. "I already almost lost everything that night in the storm," she replied. "You helped me find what really matters." "I love you," he said simply. "I love you too," she whispered. "And nothing will change that." The boardroom was overflowing the next morning. Employees crowded outside the glass walls, not just executives, but janitors, assistants, engineers, and receptionists. The vote had become more than a corporate decision. It was a symbol of what Apex stood for. "Our stock is dropping," Bradley said. "Our reputation." "Our stock dropped because Harrison Cross was arrested," Scarlett interrupted. "It's recovering now because of the reforms Terrence and I implemented. Reforms that promote unqualified people." Bradley sneered. "Unqualified?" Terrence rose from his seat. "Unqualified is promoting someone because they golf with you. Unqualified is hiring your roommate's kid. Unqualified is what this company did for years while people like me, engineers, innovators, hard workers, cleaned your offices." Janet, the maintenance supervisor, stepped forward. "May I speak?" Scarlett nodded. "I've worked here 15 years, Janet said. "None of our previous CEOs knew my name. Terrence was the first executive who ever asked for our input. Together, they're making Apex a place where my daughter might actually have a future." One by one, employees spoke up, praising the changes, The mentorship programs the new opportunities. Even Eleanor Hutchinson, Bradley's mother and a major shareholder, stood. "I've been silent too long," she said. "Bradley, I'm ashamed of you. This company was built by people of all colors. Scarlett and Terrence remind me what love can be. Brave, unconditional, transformative. You have my full support." The tide had turned. When the vote was called, Scarlett retained her position with overwhelming support. Bradley stormed out, his final words bitter. "The real world doesn't work like your fairy tale." But he was wrong. 5 years later, Apex Industries had become a model of corporate diversity and inclusion. Profit sharing programs ensured every employee shared in the company's success. Terrence's sustainability initiatives won national awards. Together, he and Scarlett founded a scholarship program for underprivileged youth and created career pipelines from blue-collar to executive roles. And on a quiet evening, as they drove home past the same rain-slicked highway where their story had begun, Scarlett asked, "If you could go back, would you do it again?" Knowing all the hate, the struggle, the pain. "Every single time," Terrence answered. She smiled, taking his hand. "I'd jump out of that car faster, just to find you sooner." They drove on, past the place where two worlds collided and became one. The storm that brought them together had long passed, but the legacy it left behind, love, equality, and a belief that change is possible, would last forever.